Hello. Welcome in, everyone. How are we doing today? You doing well? I hope so. We will be reading Department 19. We'll do a little recap of what happened previously, and then we'll begin. But yes, what happened? Jamie goes to a cafeteria, eats nice food while talking to Terry. They have a conversation about how Terry doesn't blame Jamie for his dad's mistakes. He then goes to the playground, and there are a lot of people watching him. He gets geared up with a bunch of things such as battle armor, a purple VR visor, and so on. With Terry's guidance, he tries out a bunch of weapons. He tries out the T/18 pneumatic launcher, which people refer to as T-Boom. It's a weapon that instantly vaporizes vampires. Jamie then gets complimented for his aim, and he's seen as a natural. Gets beat up by Terry. Again, that's all training, Terry says. After that, he goes into the virtual simulation where he has to fight vampires. He does extraordinarily well until randomly he gets his neck mauled, and he leaves the simulation in shock. And that's what happened previously. And hi, Paula. Welcome in. How you doing? You doing well? Let me just check something real quick on my... where is it? So hi, Victor. Welcome in. Thank you for the heart me. Songwriting fun? Yes. Let's begin though, shall we? Jamie did so, stepping into the legs of the suit, sliding his arms down the sleeves, pulling the zip up to his throat, then fastening a flap over it. The uniform was incredibly light and cool. The material conformed to the contours of his body, and as he moved his arms and bent and dipped his shoulders, there was not a whisper of noise, of fabric, folding or wrapping against itself. He walked excitedly across the room and stood in front of one of the long mirrors. He barely recognized himself. But hi, Victor. Hi, Pino. How you lovelies doing? And you could make it, if you could not make it, whatever you prefer, Paula. Thank you for taking the time to work, Pariato. Very sweet. He barely recognized himself, even with his grey socks poking out beneath the legs of the suit. He looked like a different person, a young man, rather than a teenage boy. His arms hung easily at his sides, his stance casual and well-balanced. The awkward, jittery boy he had been, a boy who was always looking over his shoulder, was gone. Good. He turned away from the mirror and walked over to the metal cases sitting on the bench. One was the size of a laptop case, the other a lot bigger. He opened the small one first, and his eyes lit up when he saw its contents. Thank you for the finger heart, Victor. Lying in the hollows of the molded black foam were a Glock 18 and a Heckler & Koch MP5, the same guns he had fired out in the playground. He lifted the weapons out of their slots and held them in his hands. A calm chill spread down his spine, and a voice in the back of his head whispered to him. They feel like they belong to you, don't they? If you put them on, they do. Once you put them on, you never take them off. Not really. So hi, Nanny. Hi, Marion, and hi, Taffy. Welcome in. Oh, you're very sweet, Tabby. And get some rest, fellow. You deserve it. I'm doing well, Marion. Quite sleepy as usual, but aside from that, all is well. Jamie knew this was a pivotal moment. The point at which the door to a life that did not involve guns and vampires might shut forever. At which the course of the rest of his life hung in the balance. And there was a part of him that wanted to put the guns down, wanted to walk out of this room in his own clothes. But he knew in his heart it was not an option. If he left his mother to die, he would... If he left his mother... Oh gosh, what am I doing? If he left, his mother would die. He was sure of it, and he would gladly turn the rest of his life over to violence and darkness if it meant he could save her. So, he lifted 2 clips from the foam slots that sat at the edge of the case, loaded the guns and slipped them into the holsters on either side of his uniform. Not going back. He lifted the layer of foam that had held the guns out of the case. Sure, he knew what was going to be lying beneath it. He was right. A metal stake with a black rubber handle lay next to a gleaming T-bone and a black gas tank. He lifted them from the foam, slid the stake into the loop on his belt, but he did not attach the T-bone. Instead, he opened the second case. Springs pushed 4 metal wire grids up into a set of shelves, half the width of the case in which lay the components of the blacklight body armor. Beside the shelves sat a jet black helmet with a purple visor. Jamie looked at it, but did not reach out and touch it. The helmet seemed to radiate danger and power, and for a moment, he was scared of it. So hi, Red. Welcome in. I like that face you do when you come in. Too late. Too late for that. He knew that was true. It was too late. Jamie reached out and slid his hand over the smooth metal of the helmet, as if to prove he was not afraid of it. Then closed both the cases, picked them up over the protests of his aching arms, and walked out of the changing room. Terry was waiting for him in the playground. The instructor looked Jamie up and down as he entered, a faint smile creeping into the corners of his mouth. Then, he extended his hand towards Jamie, who took it immediately. They shook. "You did well," Terry said. "Better than anyone could have expected, even me, and I've been doing this for a long time. Keep your eyes be open and be aware of your surroundings. Remember what happened in the shed. You'll be alright out there." Jamie thanked him. He stood where he was, waiting to see if there was more to be said. But Terry nodded towards the exit and said, "Dismissed." Jamie nodded, picked up the cases, turned sharply on his heels, and headed for the door. He was about to place his hand on the handle when Terry spoke again. "Don't listen to what anyone says about your dad. You can't change what you did. You can't change what people think of him. But you can change what they think about you. So, go and do it." Jamie turned back to reply, but Terry was already striding away down the playground, his back to the boy. Jamie pulled open the door marked exit and walked through it. Frankenstein was waiting on the other side. "There are some people who want to meet you," he said. "Come with me." Frankenstein led Jamie up 1 level and through a winding series of corridors before stopping in front of a pair of double doors. Engraved on a brass plaque on the wall next to them were the words, "Officer's Mess." Jamie read them and frowned. So welcome in, Stans. Welcome in, Alex. How you guys doing today? And I hope you enjoy your sleep, Stans. This is not a lullaby. I am reading a book called Department 19 by Will Hill, and I hope you enjoy. Where was I? He pushed open one of the doors and stepped through it. Jamie followed him after a second or two, looking after nervously. A chorus of greetings filled the air as the door closed behind him. The source of the noise was a cluster of armchairs, arranged in a loose arc around a vast flat-screen television. Frankenstein raised a hand in greeting, and the occupants of the chair all rose and made towards them. Jamie had a moment to cast his eyes around the room, before he was surrounded. The mess was large and almost square. Along one wall ran a beautiful wooden bar, behind which stood two immaculately dressed barmen, their faces masks of professional serenity, even as the room exploded into noise and movement around them. Oh, welcome in, Mystical. How are you doing today? Also, Chris, it's because my content isn't very, engaging, if that makes sense. TikTok prioritizes very fast-paced, crazy stuff, you know what I mean? And, I do chill stuff. So, yeah. And I never look at the numbers. If I'm reading to one person, I'm happy. But yes, enjoy the reading, Mystical. We are reading Department 19 by Will Hill. The middle of the room was given over to a number of low wooden tables, some round, some rectangular, around which more armchairs were gathered. Not many of the chairs were occupied, but the men and women in the ones that were had all turned around to see what the fuss was about. The tables were covered in backgammon seats, backgammon sets, chessboards, unfinished card games, and glasses and bottles of every shape and size. At the far end of the mess was a long wooden dining table with at least 12 chairs down either side of it. In the wall beyond the table were two dark wooden doors, on which Dining 1 and Dining 2 were stenciled in flamboyant gold script. Jamie had never been in a gentleman's club, but he had an idea that he was looking at something very close to one now. The air was thick with cigarette and pipe smoke, and the heady scents of wine, port, and brandy. Then, Jamie was surrounded by noise and extended hands, and he focused on the men around him. Solace, welcome in. How are you doing today? You doing well? And hi, Mia. Don't smother the boy, said Frankenstein, but he was smiling as he did so. Jamie, let me introduce you to some of my colleagues. Thomas Morris. A man in his late 20s stepped forward and offered a hand, which Jamie accepted. Morris wore a black-light uniform, with an ancient-looking bowie knife hanging loosely from his belt. He grinned at Jamie, then clapped him hard on the back. "Thought you were gonna do it," he said excitedly. "I really did. No one ever has, not the first time. I thought you were. Can't believe the girl from the shit got you." His smile widened, and Jamie felt one of his own spread across his face. The man's excitement was contagious. Christian Gonala. Morris stepped aside, and an extremely handsome Latino man replaced him. Jamie guessed that he was in his 40s, but he could have been much younger. Black hair fell casually across the dark skin of his forehead, and his eyes shone with vitality. They shook hands. "It's a pleasure to meet you," Gonala said. "My father wanted very much to be here, but he was called away to Germany. He asked me to pass on his congratulations on your performance, to which I add my own." Thank you," said Jamie. "Please thank your father as well." Also, I'm glad your head's feeling better, Victor. That's what I do for headaches. And I am reading Department 19 today. If you'd rather read along with me with the book on screen, you can click the link of my profile, go onto my profile, click the link, and join on the Purple app where I have the book on screen. And bubble tea is always must have. The man said that he would, and stepped aside. Jamie's head was spinning. The warmth of these greetings, the happiness in the faces of these men, was so different from the majority of the treatment he had received since Frankenstein rescued him, that it brought a thick lump into his throat. Colm Holmwood. The name was instantly familiar to Jamie, and he looked at the man who approached him with great curiosity. A descendant of the founders, like me. Like, this is creepy because I am a bit creepy. I know this is a book called, well, I'm reading on stream. I'm reading a book called Department 19, but the book in my hands that my model is holding is it's like a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Because you can't see it because it's so dark, but it's got big red letters saying, "Don't panic on." The member of the legendary Holmwood family was a small, neat man in his 30s. He wore clear, rimless glasses, and he had the face of an academic rather than a soldier. But when Jamie took his outstretched hand, the grip was strong. "Mr. Carpenter," Holmwood said. His voice was the very definition of politeness, but there was warmth there as well. "It's a shame we are not being introduced 5 years from now, but circumstances are what they are. Welcome to the Blacklight." Jamie thanked him, and Holmwood moved aside. "Jacob Scott." "Welcome in, Beacon. How are you doing today?" "Nice, Lepa. You doing well?" "Let's have a look at him then," said a loud voice, shot through with a streak of Australian accent. The man it belonged to stepped from behind Frankenstein and grinned at Jamie. Scott was in his 60s at least, his tanned skin weathered and creased, but his eyes were bright, and the grin on his face was wide and welcoming. He grasped Jamie's hand, held it tight, squeezing until the bones creaked, and Jamie pulled his hand free. "Not bad for an old boy," said Scott. Where was I?" said Scott cheerfully. "Yeah?" Jamie smiled, massaging his hand in pain, and the old man then playfully punched him on the upper arm. Jamie rocked slightly and forced his smile to remain where it was. Jamie peered at him, then looked up at Frankenstein. "My gosh, that sounds difficult, Beacon. I hope you're doing a bit better now. I don't know how recently you've woken up, but I really hope that you're feeling well now and taking care of yourself." "I like him, Frankie," he said. "Got a bit of grit in him. Respects his elders do." "You can tell him yourself, Jacob," smiled Frankenstein. "He's right there." Scott returned his gaze to Jamie. "You need anything, boy? You just let me know, don't be shy." "I won't," said Jamie. "Thank you." "Also, thank you for the gift. Thank you for the gift, Beacon. I appreciate it. Also, I have a lot of books on my to-read list, so maybe in like half a year I could check it out. I might add it to my reading list. But yeah. A nice Silver, welcome in. How are you doing today? If you want to recommend a book, you can always put it in the suggest channel of my Discord server. The link to my website with all my links is on my profile. The man walked stiffly away from the armchairs, and Jamie watched him go, overwhelmed. Had all these men known his father? He supposed they must have done. Yet, they were obviously pleased to see him. Jamie suspected Excuse me. Jamie suspected that the word carpenter was working for him rather than against him for the first time since he had arrived at the loop. He believed these men were proud to see another member of one of the founding families joining Department 19. Paul Turner. Jamie started in front of him, standing motionless and exuding the same sense of menace that he felt last time they had met, was the mayor from Cell Block. Jamie gulped, hoped that it hadn't been visible, then extended his hand. For a moment it hung there, pale even in the warm lighting of the mess. Then Turner shook it briskly and smiled at Jamie. "Nice to see you again," he said, and Frankenstein glanced at the mayor. You too," replied Jamie. "You did well," said Turner. "Haven't seen a debut like that in a long time. Reminded me of my own." Jamie examined the man's face for an insult, but didn't see one. Instead, the mayor was still smiling, and he smiled back. Thanks," he replied. "I still screwed it up at the end, though. Everyone fails the first time. Better to do it in here than out there. No second chances in this field." "I'll be careful," said Jamie. "Do that," replied Turner, and stepped away. Right. So don't worry, Beacon. You get lots of rest, alright? Night, son. Thank you for the rose. Also, I'm glad you like the Discord server, Chris. I have everything, what do you call it? Everything streamlined, like the recaps, announcements, and the schedule and suggestions. Those are all for all ages, but I have only the actual server, like all the chat channels and the voice channels, as 18 plus because of safety purposes. I can't control what people are saying and doing 24/7. Also, I'll do that for $20, Alex, so take it or leave it. Link Ko-fi. Yeah. $20 is $20, guys. Night, Firestar. Welcome in. My day's going good. I did a lot of reading. I've been reading a book called Alchemized, and I'm at page 740 at the moment. Hi, Dilly. Hi, Daftone. You alright? You guys doing okay today? Let's continue. Then, everyone was talking at once, and Jamie was about to ask Frankenstein whether he could go to bed when the room suddenly fell silent. The men were looking past Jamie towards the door. He turned round and found Mayor Harker standing in front of him. The old man walked deliberately up to Jamie, stared into his eyes for a long, precarious second, then slowly, ever so slowly, raised his right hand and held it out. Jamie took it cautiously, and the mayor leant in and spoke 4 words. "Don't let us down." Then, as suddenly as he had arrived, he released Jamie's hand, spun stiffly on his heels, and walked out of the mess. Was a beacon? I don't think you sent that to me. My fave genre to read is fantasy, horror, science fiction, those sorts of things. So today will probably be quite a short stream since I am very tired. So welcome in, Edward. How you doing today? Oh, I see what you mean, Beacon. TikTok gives TikTok takes the majority of everything from that, so it's always best to spot directly instead of through gifts because TikTok is not very nice with that sort of stuff. Where was I? Behind Jamie, there was an audible exhalation of relief, and the group of men began to disperse, chatting amongst themselves some heading towards the chairs in front of the TV, some making their way towards the bar. Only Frankenstein and Thomas Morris stayed where they were, and Jamie took a step towards them. What do you mean by that, Beacon? A nice sniper sword update. I'd love to see the sword when you're finished with it. Also, bye-bye, Red. Sweet dreams. You have a lovely rest of your day. Also, I've not read that Firestar, I'm sorry. And hi, Ben. Thank you for the water consume, I appreciate it. Let me drink something now. Ben also does reading streams and gaming streams and studying streams, so if you like any of those things in a chill vibe, make sure to go check Ben out. Also, I'm sorry, I have a reading list of books that I'm reading here, a long one. And we are reading Department 19 for the next month or so, until I finish the book. Where was I? What is it, Tom? Asked Frankenstein. His tone was impatient, and Morris flinched slightly. There was something I wanted to show Jamie, he replied. It won't take long. Frankenstein shrugged and looked at the teenager. It's up to you, Jamie, he said. He looked at Morris's earnest, excited face. Okay, he replied. As long as it won't take long, I really am tired. Also, I'm sorry, Logan, I only read the books. I'm reading Department 19 at the moment. I'll be reading Department 19 for the next month, and then after that I have a list of other books. Great, replied Morris. 15 minutes, I promise you, no longer than that. Let's go. He threw an arm around Jamie's shoulder and led him towards the door. Jamie cast a look over his shoulder at Frankenstein, and then they were through the door and out of the mess. Jamie was led down grey corridors to wait. Where was I? One of the lifts. While they waited for it to arrive, Morris talked incessantly, telling Jamie facts and figures about Department 19 that he knew had absolutely no chance of remembering. Eventually, as his companion took a microscopic pause for breath, he interjected. Was a high shadow? Welcome in. No, it is a British accent. Also, Silva, please don't do that. Also, if you look at the details in the redeem, that when you redeem that, it means I'll spend one stream on it. I won't read like the whole book, you know? Where was I? Mr. Morris, he said. When are we going? Tom, please, replied Morris. I'm sorry, of course I should have told you already. I'm just a little excited. We're going up to see our ancestors. Our ancestors? That's right. The lift doors opened and Morris stepped inside. Jamie followed him, and they descended in silence, the excitement seeming to have either worn the blacklight officer out of... The excitement seeming to have either worn the blacklight officer out or taken him over so completely that he could no longer speak at all. They emerged on level F, into a corridor as grey as all the rest, but, mercifully, Morris stopped at the first pair of doors at the left, tall smoked glass with the word archives printed across them in black type. There was a rush of air as the doors were pushed open, and Jamie's arms broke out into gooseflesh as the temperature dropped appreciably. The room was long and extremely wide, and looked like a cross between a library and meat locker. Tendrils of cold air snaked around his ankles as he walked forward between the two long metal sets of shelving. Racks of studded metal and clear plastic extended away on both sides to the distant walls. There were at least 40 of them, and each one was loaded with books, folders, and manuscripts. hidden behind clear plastic doors that each featured a small 9-digit keypad next to them. Also, no worries, Shadow. The way I pronounce my T's. And Solace says, how do you like squats? I don't like them, but I'll do them. If I get a channel redeem telling me to do 20 squats, I will do them. At the other end of the room, the end that Myers was leading him towards, the glass partitions separated the climate-controlled racks from a comfortable-looking study area. Blonde wood tables and padded chairs, rows of computer terminals, and a wall of black filing cabinets. Also, a little pause from the reading, everyone. I multi-stream, and on the Purple app, someone has redeemed something called 20 squats, which means I have to do 20 squats. So we'll do that real quick, and then we'll return. I encourage you guys to do the squats as well to stay healthy. Let me do mine quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, let me get my chair again, hold on. Of course we need a sports break. I won't be streaming for much longer though, so yeah. I'm very tired today. Where was I? Morris slid open a glass door, and as they entered this area, Jamie felt warmth creep back into his skin. In the middle of the wall, at the back of the second area, was a large stone arch, beneath which was a heavy-looking door. There was no keypad here, just an ornate brass handle, which Morris turned, and with an audible grunt pushed the door open. The atmosphere inside this final room was like that of a church. It was almost silent. The only noises that could be heard were their breathing and the clatter of their boots on the hardwood floor beneath them. The room was a narrow gallery, with dark red walls and ceiling. It was at least 100 feet long, and the walls on both sides were covered in painted portraits. Jamie looked at the first one on his right and saw a young man looking down at him, his body at a quarter turn, his uniform identical to the one Jamie was now wearing. A small smile of what looked like pride creeping into the corners of his mouth. He looked at the gold plaque below the portrait and read what was engraved there. George Harker Jr., 1981 to 2007. What is this place? He whispered. It's the Fallen Gallery, Morris replied, also lowering his voice as he did so. Sorry, big yawn. This is all the blacklight operators who've died. Morris laughed, then put a hand over his mouth for a second, as if afraid he was about to be chastised for such levity. He withdrew it and replied, Not quite. You would need a bigger room than this to hang a portrait of every member of Blacklight who has been lost. An awful lot bigger. No, this is for the elite of Department 19, the best and the brightest, or those who died before their time. This is where our ancestors live on, Jamie. Every member of both our families is in this room. Jamie was awestruck by Morris's words and by the sights around him. He walked slowly forward, looking at the men and women who stared down at him from the red walls, reading the plaques, seeing the same names over and over and over again as he made his way down the gallery. Benjamin Soward, Stephen Holmwood, Albert Harker, David Harker, and so on, so on. 3/4 of the way down the gallery, a single bust of a man's head stood atop a marble pillar in the middle of the wooden floor. It was carved from dark grey stone and stared down the gallery towards the door, as if challenging anyone who might enter. The face was rugged, had probably been handsome in its youth, and wore a thick moustache above a thin mouth and angular jaw. Jamie stopped to read the inscriptions on the marble, and Mars, who had been walking quietly 6 feet behind the teenager, did likewise. Quincy Harker, all we are to him. 1894 to 1982. Jonathan Harker's son, breathed Jamie, and Morris nodded. Jamie walked around the bust and continued through the gallery. The portraits were getting older now, the paint fading in some, cracked in others, the frames duller and more beaten down by the years. He reached the end of the gallery and looked up at the 6 paintings that faced him from the wall, their eyes full of pride. The men who had sat for all the portraits were long dead. Abraham Van Helsing, 1827 to 1904. Jonathan Harker, 1861 to 1917. Quincy Morris, 1860 to 1892. John Soward, 1861 to 1924. Fix those, just finished 5 years, so I just wanted not to play now. I really like this one game on Steam called Melatonin. It's a bit pricey, but it's really relaxing and nice to play. Okay, I think that's where I'll have to end for today. I'm sorry, but I hope you all enjoyed the reading and that you all have a lovely rest of your day, night, anytime it is for you. Thank you all for taking the time to tune in, and if you go to my profile, there's a link to my Discord server where I write recaps of what happened previously on stream. And, yeah, thank you all again. Stay safe, don't panic, and may you all live in interesting times. Bye-bye.